Okay. Planning Commission hearing for October 27th, 2014 is called to order. The first item of business is the Oregon City Sign Code update, planning file L14-01.
You're not going to ask if there's anybody here who would like to discuss something that's not currently on the agenda?
It's not on my agenda.
You should have that memorized.
It's not on my agenda.
I'm willing to bet
I'll add that
everybody
next
hears
time.
about something.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet everybody hears about the
But
signs.
it's nice to ask.
I don't
I'm
have
gonna go
to.
sit out there too with
It's
signs.
not on the agenda. I don't have to say it.
Oh, that's not
They're
how it
separating.
works.
I hope you can make it through. All right, good evening.
Thank you, Laura. We'll hear the commission report.
All right, so we're here, let's see, it's our 6th commission hearing for our planning commission for our sign code. We've had a few work sessions on top of that, and then some meetings and hearings and work sessions with the city commission as well. We are here to talk about signs on both private and public property. The screen you're looking at, if you toggle your screen, is an example of our current sign code, where we're looking at signs both freestanding and attached to buildings that talk about anything anyone would like to say. We're content neutral, so we're not looking at exactly what the sign says, but we're looking at the material, the height, and the location of the signs. It was one of the goals of the City Commission in 2014, or series of years, to look at our sign code and evaluate it and come up with signage standards which are safe, clear, fair, and supportive of our community. And so that is what we have been working on. We have had over 20 meetings with various city groups, as well as yourself. We put together a community advisory team to form an initial code and give the staff direction on major issues. We had an open house for the public to weigh in on those major issues, and then we've also come up with a final report, which was in the packet as well. So now we are here, and we are just fixing all the last minute tweaks and bugs in our code, and we are going to ask for adoption tonight, or a recommendation to the City Commission for adoption. So our last draft of our code was on May 12th. Here's a summary of all of the changes that we've had since May 12th. We sort of talked about this at the last work session as well. There's some minor edits and organizational changes. From the direction was given at our last work session, we took out freestanding signs as allowed in residential zones. We also clarified about projecting signs in residential zones, and also for conditional uses. Our code was silent on if projecting signs were now allowed or not, so I put it in. If you'd like to take it out, we could do that too. We also included banners on streetlight poles, so I'll show you a picture in just a minute. We added some language about not allowing compensation for public murals, not to the artists themselves, but to the building person where the mural is. A-frame signs, as we discussed the times for A-frame signs, we left it at our last work session from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. In the last code on May 12th, it was a maximum of 12 hours today, which is a little bit more difficult to regulate because we don't know when people put up the signs. And then also from Planning Commission direction, we changed the number of times a day a sign may change from 1 to 3. So I'm just going to summarize real quick in very nice pictures that are not to scale, examples of our code so people can do in single-family and residential zones, a wall sign, and some ancillary signs which are less than 6 square feet, and also signs in the right-of-way, or they can do a projecting sign, some small signs, and then signs in the right-of-way as well. In a multifamily zoning designation, you can do a wall sign with a freestanding sign and 2 smaller signs, right-of-way sign, or rather than a wall sign, you can do a projecting sign, freestanding sign, 2 smaller signs, and sign in the right-of-way. So these are total worst-case scenarios, the maximum signs you could do. Conditional uses in residential zones, you can do wall sign, freestanding sign, 2 small signs, and right-of-way sign, or the projecting sign as well. Sorry about that. commercial mixed use and zones, industrial zones. This will also, as a side note, include Blue Heron. How we wrote the code, the new Blue Heron zoning designation is included. So you can do some wall signs, roof signs, and a mixture of other smaller signs. Wall sign and a projecting sign, a wall sign. Our new code will allow banners temporarily for a certain amount of time, a couple times per year. Signs in the right-of-way. So what's new to you is the signs on light poles, which is the picture of this farmer's market sign right here. Ooh,
We know it.
it's a touchy little button. What we already had included was the signs in the right-of-way, meaning those A-frame signs, and then the signs projecting over the streets. Public murals, approval is required by a arts commission in a type 3 process. As a side note, we're working on assembling an arts commission, which is already in our code. And until the arts commission gets up and running, there was a suggestion that the planning commission act as the arts commission if a mural application was submitted within that small time frame. We haven't had anyone talk to us about submitting a mural application. So murals have to be approved by the arts commission. So during that timeline when we're assembling that commission, who approves it? So we need to temporarily designate somebody else until the arts commission is up and running, which we are working on. We also have in our packet that you received tonight a list of murals which are exempt, which is all existing murals. So murals we defined as painted signs that don't meet our sign code right now, right? So large painted wall signs. If it was a mural and it was small and it was on a large wall, and our code now says you get twice the length of the wall for total square footage of signage, and it would meet that, then it wouldn't go on our list because we have our non-conforming code, and it would meet that non-conforming code. Whereas these ones on this list maybe wouldn't meet that non-conforming code. So we're not looking at content, just basically the size of it. Prohibited signs, we added attention flags, air-blown signs, abandoned signs. The picture right there is an attention flag, which we define as a flag where one side is less than 3 times the length of the other sides. So it's getting at the shape of the flag, not the content of the flag. So, in conclusion, I wanted to enter this presentation and some public comments that we've received since our last hearing, mainly in the last month or so, into the record. And we wanted to recommend approval of Planning File L1401. Are there any questions I can answer for you?
Yes. I was just wondering what happened to our conversation from the last time that about 1 A-frame per property owner versus 1 per each business in that within the block. I didn't see that mentioned in there, so I thought I'd better ask.
From the work session, I was thinking that the commission as a whole, had decided on 1 per frontage.
So if somebody owns the whole block, then there's only 1 sign allowed on the whole block.
So for each property has 1 per frontage. If you're on a corner, then you would get 1 on one side and 1 on the other one. Mm-hmm. Is that the appropriate?
I think that's what we
Yeah.
ended up with.
Well, that clears my vote up against it.
The Arts Commission, just a question. It would be really terrific if there was a spot for someone who is a lay person. It's not that I have anything against artists. I think artists are really awesome. But art is generally in the eye of the beholder most times. And it would be nice to have somebody who wasn't directly tied to an arts group or an artist themselves in order to maybe provide a non-artist sort of unbiased, maybe
You mean the
not
ordinary
affiliated.
person's opinion?
Huh?
The ordinary person's opinion?
Sure, maybe they're not ordinary, but just a,
Well,
you
it's
know.
the opinion for them.
I'm just thinking of like a regular person. I don't know who that is and how that's defined, but just Tony's grimacing. What is she talking about?
Not sure how we write that one up.
Well, no, I just it could be
You
it could
open up the
be
Oregon City phone book and
It
you
could
and
be
you pick that person and you send them
a
a letter.
person at large of some sort. like that.
As long as they have no art history background.
Well, you know,
We're looking
I'm
for
just-
somebody with no artistic taste.
Well-
No artistic taste.
no, they had. So let me give you an example. When we had the Oregon City, and I found another copy of this, the Oregon City Mural Group. I sat on it as a city staff person. I do not have an art background, but the reason I was asked to be on it is because of my preservation and history background. And we were looking at the murals that are there have some historic value in terms of what they're trying to project. Not all the ones we have currently, and I'm not saying that in the future they might not, but in terms of other communities, that's really what they have pinned their tourism on. And so I was the one person on the group that I did not have an art degree, I did not have a art background, I was not an artist, but I was on there for a completely different set of expertise.
It's a good suggestion.
And then they also made me do all the work because I was a staff person. So there was that too.
That's why you were on
I
that.
think that's really why I was on it.
So the Arts Commission, so this is 2.26020 of the Municipal Code. The Arts Commission shall consist of 9 members appointed by the mayor. Such members may include a representative of the following entities: Carnegie Center, Clackamas Community College, Oregon City Schools, the Arts Action Alliance of Clackamas County. The Arts Commission shall also contain at least 5 members from a broad spectrum of citizens representing the performance art, music, drama, visual arts, library arts, and the fields of structural and landscape architecture, and shall also include, in addition to these 5 members from the arts community, at least 2 citizens at large.
Okay. But see, we don't have the Carnegie Center anymore. So that's kind of, that's a
So
little
the,
bit
the
dated.
community at large would be what Denise is
Thinking that's
talking
kind of
about.
what you're referring to, right?
Those with no artistic.
Well,
Limited artistic skills.
And I'd say a 9-person commission
Is
is,
huge.
I mean, if we can eliminate Carnegie and 1 at large, then you're down to 7. It's-
Which is manageable.
Yeah, well,
Be 5 or 7.
yeah.
5
Because
preferably.
the other thing is you got to get them together on potentially short notice because somebody's got a application in and it isn't, you know, or you set up a regular meeting and you constantly cancel it, which is more irritating, kind of in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's in the code, but it's just, it's an idea, you know, again, if we're looking at particularly additional murals downtown, I think that while I don't totally get the total connection, I see the historic value in the new one that's in place of the one that's on here that's gone now. And I would, you know, be nice if that one came back in some different form, but it's what I have heard from public members that I've been sashaying around town is that all of those have some connection to something that happened here, and people, they just eat that up. It's great.
Except for the first city cycle sign. Trying to figure
Well,
out
yeah,
what the
that's
story
not,
is.
yeah, that's more of advertising.
Yeah, but it's not. It's a mural, and it's going to be acceptable under our code.
Based
Well,
off
as long
square
as-
footage and
Well, yeah, I
that's
mean,
painted, right?
I don't, I'm giving my own opinion. I don't see it as a mural. It's an advertising mural. If it had a bunch of people on old-fashioned bicycles, or they showed the Huntley Brothers drugstore, where there's a picture somewhere in the library that shows them on their bicycles because they sold bicycles and they promoted bicycles, that would be kind of cool. But it's kind of advertising them. What I'm glad that we're not doing is that, I'm sure you're aware of the little situation that's been going on in Portland, is that because Mayor Katz kind of went on a rampage about these murals and things, the sign company started putting little tags on the building saying, oh, here's our sign, and they put like 4 little roses on the corners, and then they said, oh, that's our sign. And then next thing you know, a big old vinyl thing would appear, or something would appear on it. And
Several murals got painted over to become advertising.
yeah, and it was kind of sad, especially Tacky, the elephant.
Just
The
a
fact is still there.
I got a
It's
small
well
detail about
it's gone.
murals. And I guess if we're doing this easement on how we're going to deal with murals and
That's how they do it.
how we're going to manage them and all that kind of stuff, there is the Visual Artist Rights Act, which allows an artist to declare intellectual rights to a mural. And that might hamstring the city's ability to, remove a mural or change it or do whatever. So
Or use it in,
he may want to
Brochures.
put some language in there that makes the rights the cities to do with the mural what they need to do with it at the time. So that's all.
Something like we're joint copyright holders or something, so they can, if they want to do a postcard and whatever, they can do it. If they want to put it on their website, they can do it, but so can we.
Yeah.
And then one thing I like about our mural code is that,
Exactly.
unlike other signs where you can just sort of change the text or, pull out the plastic piece and put in a new one with the new
Can't do
tenant,
that with a mural.
with murals, you can't just paint over a new sign. That will have to go back to the Arts Committee. So with those existing ones, eventually when they get painted over, they'll have to go to the Arts Committee.
And I think that's fine. I just don't want to have, when it goes through that process, I don't want to have, the author of a mural saying, no, you can't do that. This mural has to stay here forever and ever. And
Or
yeah.
almost worse yet would be like the grandkids. That's the only thing left of Grandpa's painting, and
Right.
so no, I'll pay to have it replaced or whatever. And
So did you respond to Damon's comment about the Joe Meek one
Yeah.
that's on the Elks Lodge?
yeah,
Yes.
Because it was on this brochure.
Yeah, so it was small enough to where it falls under our code for an acceptable size of a wall sign right now. So it didn't make it on the list, because the list is just painted wall signs that are larger than our code allows right now.
and I
With all
think
due respect, it kind of doesn't really make sense. It's a mural. It should be part of the list regardless of what size it is, because it is a mural. I don't see it as it's not an advertising sign.
Jennifer, are we allowed to look at the content for the purposes of the existing murals list, which are exempt from the code?
You still can't regulate on content.
So even creating the list, because we would be basing it on content, is not okay.
Is that, how did you do it?
Based on
We base it on
murals that are larger than allowed by code.
so painted wall signs that are larger than our code allows.
Murals.
So with that, you'll see the list. Most of them are murals, and some of them. There's a
If they met
couple
the
ones
size
for the
requirements,
pool.
We wouldn't need this.
Mhm. So-
Is the one that Mr. Maybe was referring to on that list?
no,
Because it meets our code.
Yeah.
Okay.
and she did respond that way, and so it's
When I was looking under the proposed section 1528.090, I didn't see any list there.
It was an attachment. I have a
Mhm.
copy of it if you want
it's
to see
like
it.
the very last
Um,
attachment in our on the agenda list.
Last week, or last time, one of the questions I asked is it feasible within the mural regulation to prohibit advertisement?
So we did do more research on murals since we last left, and we revisited some of the prior research that we had, and we did not see a way in which we could legally look at the content of the mural. But there are other ways around it. One is that we're looking at the appropriate size of the mural, so it doesn't take over a historic building or something like that, because those will have to go through a historic review board. And then also the compensation. So we're relying on the new language about no compensation and that clarification of what compensation actually means. So it's not exactly just money, it's other stuff too, to
So
avoid
providing
advertisement.
value in terms of advertising would be compensation.
Right.
If say the building owner is compensated in any particular way, then
Which would be advertising their business.
right, then it wouldn't be allowed. We put in a definition of compensation, which means the exchange of something of value. It includes, without limitation, money, securities, real property, interest, barter of goods or services, promise of future payment, or forbearance of debt. Compensation does not include goodwill or the exchange of value that a building owner or leaseholder with the right to possession of the wall places to an artist, muralist, or other entity where compensation is the only creation and or maintenance of the mural on behalf of the building owner or leaseholder, and where the building owner or leaseholder fully controls the content of the art mural. It's a long couple of sentences, but so we tried to do a complete list of everything for compensation. Actually matches Milwaukee's. They passed a mural code a little while back.
So it's similar to theirs. Okay.
exactly similar.
Exactly similar.
Yes, it
That's-
is.
Yeah, that was unfortunately one of the attachments
But I
I did
don't-
not get to read.
I'm not sure where self-advertising falls into that definition of compensation. I didn't,
Since we can't look at the content of the sign, we can't say no advertising because that would require us to read the sign to see if it's advertising or not. So all we have are requirements that you have to pay the money and go through this process and be granted a city easement and barriers to make it more difficult for people to do murals.
And it requires approval by the Art Commission.
So that's,
So we did, I noticed in a couple of the other attachments that I looked at, they were very specific to call them art murals.
We did look at a lot of jurisdictions and we don't believe that we could implement the same language because we want language that's 100% legally defensible.
As I understand it, this position is based on the lawsuit against Lake Oswego that defined the content. Is that correct?
There's all kinds of sign code cases, and you guys brought up also the City of Portland problem. This is just a highly litigated area of law, and in Oregon you have a really broad freedom of speech right, and so when you start to try to regulate signs, you have to be very cognizant not to regulate on content, and that's
So
what we were very-
prohibiting advertisement does
Do not do that.
Is it possible to prohibit text on a mural?
the difficulty with that is if you're doing a historic mural and the Five and Dime store had Five and Dime painted on their window, you now have text.
You got text.
Yeah, well, the one.
Or the street
Well,
address or the street
An
names.
example,
or
this historic art
Right.
mural
Mhm.
is an old version of, but again, I wouldn't consider that advertising, even when they were in business. It's showing the
Well,
building.
and I suppose that would be considered text
Yeah.
on the street or the
Yeah.
trolley.
And then there's some Latin right here talking about what a statesman Dr. McLaughlin is and Joe Meek and how wonderful they were. And
I think you really have to hope that your commission system does its job, which I think in most cases in Oregon City you see that happen, and there is a duty to the public that comes up with various proposals. So you can always see how it works, but we'd be really advising against regulating anything that comes near content, and that's one of the policy decisions you're doing by opening up this
Well, and
this
also,
venue, if you will, for
and it would be
posting
difficult
signs.
for us to say no advertising when, once this is approved, the First City Cycle sign is going to be encoded. And it's like, how can it be no advertising when that's all that is? And so, I think nothing from today, nothing, no, we're better off just letting art people be art people. And so what if somebody's got a Pepsi can in their hand? If you want to stop long enough to look at it, then great, you stopped and looked at art. Congratulations, you didn't just drive by. And by the way, notice there's some stuff for sale in the window next to you. Go in and spend money. So,
And then, not exactly about murals, but about the content neutrality. So since murals are something which we don't allow, but we are opening up to allow. In the same regard, signs in the right-of-way, which we currently don't allow, and we're opening up to allow. I mean, the same thing with the content neutrality. Someone might put an advertisement or a message
they will
the
on
city
a
might
sign
not
in the
want,
right-of-way.
or something like that, and that would still be approved as long as they met our criteria.
well, I just think it would be better defined if it was just like Milwaukee, they're calling it a public art mural.
The title, you mean, of it?
Well, I'm like I said, I apologize. I didn't get to read all the attachments because I read what I thought was the most important thing, which was your code language. So I'm looking at their code right now, and it says, it refers to public art murals, and I think, that's, well, again, I can't say reasonable people because I don't know who they are, and they're not, and they are defined in law, but, I heard the word public art mural, certain thing comes to my mind as to what it is.
So we're referring to them in our code as just public murals.
You're just referring to them as public murals. Because you kind of talk about the art commission, and to me, those things kind of tie together. That you're having an art commission review this.
Right.
You know, what's to say we just don't
If
have?
you look at the definition in the city of Milwaukee's code, that it defines public art mural very similarly to what our definition of a mural is.
Well,
So could we add the word art?
I just have a tough time trying to think of any mural that isn't art.
Well, you could say the same thing about signs,
Signs
right?
not art to me, but that's just
Right,
me.
but that's what I'm saying. I mean, how,
No, I wouldn't say
adding the word art seems to be just 3 more letters of ink we have to start printing. I don't
Oh,
see.
Damon, they can afford it.
That's right.
Well, I just don't see the
That's just a
benefit of the word.
That's kind of a ridiculous reason.
It's
3
just-
more letters of ink.
What I'm saying
Yeah,
is,
I
it's
know what you're
completely wasted wordage and verbiage. I mean, I don't see.
It's redundant,
Yeah,
right?
Where is it? How is it redundant?
mural.
Because a mural is already art. You don't have to say art mural.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that the constitutionality of this is not going to hinge on the word art in the description of it.
Yeah.
If the group would like art, we will put art in the title.
Fine, either way, whatever you guys want to do, I don't care.
I don't know. I don't want Damon to be on Damon's bad side.
And you better not.
I think it's more about the process with the
Yeah.
easement and
Mm-hmm.
Arts
And-
Commission.
And that's why I was just asking how far we can go with restrictions on it. And whether we call it art or not, it doesn't seem like that makes any difference. I'd be happy with it either way. But I just wanted to see what the legal limits are to how much restriction we could put on that.
I think once you start trying to say art is only things that don't advertise is when we start to get into some trouble. Call it a mural program, an
let's-
art mural program, a public art program, it doesn't matter.
Let's get
It's
in
how it's
trouble.
implemented.
Let's challenge the code. Let's be rebels.
Let's wait till we adopt it, then challenge it.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, are there other questions for staff?
Okay, yeah,
Go.
as long as we're being rebels. I'm actually disappointed that we have spent more time and energy discussing murals and art than we have something that impacts small businesses in downtown Oregon City. If I in any way had ever thought that we'd be limited to only one sign and one block, I probably wouldn't have placed my business in downtown Oregon City, because if you have a whole block of like La Familia, Don Pedro's, all the other ones, and you only have one owner, and that limits you, people don't even know you're open because you can't put anything on the side of the buildings because there's awnings there and they belong to the owners. They don't want those touched. But to limit to just one A-frame to one landowner, or it limits each of those small businesses from feeling that they're being recognized, that there's a business that's even being opened.
They won't even let you put, again, this is getting very specific. I've seen in some cases where somebody doesn't want something on the awning, but they will allow sort of a temporary attachment on there that doesn't affix the sign to the awning, like with the letters, but you can get like a piece of fabric and have whatever you need on it, and then you put it on there, and then when you
I
go-
realize that, but realize that the owners own that. They don't want anything, especially like in the block I'm at. It's a black awning, he doesn't want anything attached to it, and that's why some of the businesses there don't.
Okay, so this is putting you on the spot.
But it's
So-
also a lower one, so if you tried to hang anything from
No.
it, that's going to hit
on
people's
the-
heads.
It comes down like this, and you've got the little.
Right, right.
That's where people I've
Right.
seen put
But
things.
that doesn't allow anybody to even see you're open. At least an A-frame lets people see that there's
Not when cars
businesses
are
there.
parked in front of it.
But see, none of you are business owners, and I think Jonathan pointed that out last time, that you're not taking into consideration a small business
Oh,
owner
yes, I am.
that needs to let people know that you're even open. Right now, some people come by and they say, "We didn't even know we were open because we didn't see a sign out there." So Rocky made me a sign.
What about
So
an
I have
open
one.
sign?
If you're driving by, you don't see that. If it's an A-frame, again, not just my business, I'm referring to any small business downtown. There's no way that people can see you because you're driving down there, and unless they're actually looking for a particular
Not
window.
everybody's driving time. People are walking down there.
I'm concerned with drivers and
I
people who
actually
drive
walked into your
through.
business
I know you did.
to
I
harass
heard.
you about your 2 A-frame signs that were in front
I
of your
only have
building.
one.
Well,
The
there
other
were
one's
2.
Rocky's.
Yes, but it was in. He doesn't have a business there. It was one of those signs that came from, and I'm not picking on that particular, but I just figured I'd come down after the sign code we were talking about and come and harass you about it. I'm looking at it from two standpoints. No, I'm not a business owner, but I am a consumer.
Mhm.
I have money burning a hole in my pocket that I can spend downtown. So here's the thing. If you had known that you were not going to be able to advertise, you had the option of not renting that space. I mean, it sounds like the person...
But I never knew this was coming up.
Right. Well, it doesn't matter whether you knew it or not. I mean, people have free will to rent a space where they want to rent it. And if the conditions are not right for a retail business, then that person also has the option to be in a different place where maybe there's a better environment. And maybe you didn't know when you got the lease that the building owner was, I mean, it seems to me that that's contradictory. They want to lease the space, but they don't want you to advertise. It's kind of like, okay.
But you're taking it a step too far. You're going just on me. What I'm talking about...
I'm talking about anybody.
Any businesses along the street, Main Street, should be allowed to at least have some kind of a sign out front, an A-frame, to let people know they're in business. Because again, whether you're... Yes, people do walk, but there's a lot more drivers, as you've noticed yourself down there, than there are walkers. And I can attest to that. But if you don't have some kind of an A-frame out front, it seems like it's being biased and prejudiced to those small businesses. And we spent more time on the murals than we did even
We'll get to
considering
it.
what the
But
businesses
I will tell you
do.
that
Well-
when there are two cars parked in front of ECP, you can't see your A-frame signs anyway.
Laura, can you go back to
So,
the exhibit that
It's kind of
shows?
one of those.
So
half
if I
one
can
or the other.
if I can just we've discussed A-frames quite a bit.
Right.
We have.
We have.
Well, that's why
and,
I-
And our mural too,
I'd like
week after week.
if
If I
Laura
can-
could put that exhibit back
Mhm.
up that
Just
shows
A-frames.
how many signs are allowed on a building frontage for commercial.
We just said one per property.
No, this is the one.
So it's,
Yeah.
you can still have A-frame signs on private property if there's space. I realize there's some places downtown where there's not space. So right now we don't allow any A-frames. We don't allow any signage in the right of way at all. So we're increasing the amount of signage by allowing
Well, the
one in the
practice
right of way. And there's the
code is
different
two different
combinations
things.
of projection signs, and so forth that you can have.
So one A-frame per property owner. So if there's a property owner who owns a whole block, that's only one
Well,
person,
well,
and they
Tom-
get into a bidding war with the
Tom,
other
here-
businesses.
Here's the two ends. One per property owner, and I'll use that same business you did, where it was Mia Familia, the attorney's office, and Don Pepe's.
And several
Right.
down there.
So there's one. Okay, one sign is what it currently is. The alternative is in
Actually, what it currently is zero.
well,
Well,
what I'm
that's
saying,
not
what's
the practice,
proposed.
Charles.
Okay, I don't care about the past. So the alternative is within 6 feet you have a Don Pepe sign, the attorney's sign, and a Mia Familia sign. In 6 feet you have 3.
You've never seen that so far.
No, he's
So
just
far,
giving
but
you
it's
an example.
possible
He's
if
giving
we
you
go
an
by that.
example.
Worst case.
And today, when I was down there, actually going to my attorney's in that very spot, there was a big old delivery truck parked there, and that whole 6 feet was blocked. So it wouldn't matter how many signs there were or weren't
But
there.
that's not there all day long, the delivery truck. I know
It
what you
was
mean.
there when I was there, when
Yeah.
I was driving by, so you would have lost my business because I wouldn't have saw if you were open.
I'm just saying it's limiting
So-
small businesses,
And
small
the
businesses, as
alternative
opposed to
is-
big
The
owners.
alternative is one sign or 3 signs in 6 feet. You know, and in 12 feet, it would have been 4 signs.
I just think there are other ways
So-
that you can let people know that you're open by having an open sign that's in your window that says you're open.
Yeah,
Open doesn't say the name of your business, and then you spend a lot of money for neon lights and everything else, but and even that's probably not the greatest. But again, none of you are business owners, and especially small business owners trying to make it, and so you don't understand the impact that limiting the amount of signs to one owner and the whole block
And
gets
I'm-
to
and I'm
determine.
telling you that you don't need to be a small business owner. I do get it.
I don't think so.
I think we also have to look at those people that are not as mobile as some of us are and are confined to wheelchairs and
Or
that kind of thing. And I'm looking at
Or
this
we-
diagram C for signs placed in the right of way without adjacent sidewalk or, other. There's not a lot of room for people to.
There is a
you know,
lot of
walk
room,
and
trust me. We measured
roll
it
around
last
up
week.
there. Well, I just think that if you multiply the signs, you're just going to be multiplying the number of obstacles that are in the sidewalk and right of way for people to get around.
I don't think you guys understand it, but okay.
Well,
Well, I'm just trying
I'm just trying to reconcile it, that we have a number of other options besides A-frame. I know you're pretty fixated on the A-frame signs, but there's wall signs, and there's projecting signs, and there's signs in windows. So if A-frames were the only sign option you had, then I could really see that you'd have a legitimate point. But there are a lot of other sign options available besides the A-frame. So I kind of question why another alternative sign couldn't work for you.
I'm not saying just me, I'm talking about
No,
any small business
I'm not
owner.
saying for you.
There's a big expense to have some sign that's made like the one we saw that's off the corner of that restaurant. That's pretty big, and you have to have a corner or some kind of an area to do that. But you also have to deal with a landlord, and there's several downtown who own big parcels, and you have to ask them for permission. Well, a lot of them don't want, they have historical buildings, they don't want to ruin the look of their historical building by having signs that hang out off a corner like that. Some are allowed, I guess, depends on who owns the building and the owner. But I think you're going to get into a bidding war between small businesses saying, okay, I'll pay you this much for that street to be able to have my A-frame out there, and the owner going, hey, I can make money. I can charge each one of them. Who's going to pay the highest price to have the A-frame out there for the whole block?
The beauty of capitalism.
But
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time
but you
since there
can't-
was a retail establishment in your space. It's always been a business that has not needed to have that type of advertising. And I think, we talked, I don't know if you were at the meeting, but we had a lot of discussion about that. Unfortunately, one of the things that happens when people open businesses, and I'm not saying you, but signage is usually the last thing they think of. And we had testimony to that's probably, besides a lease, that's probably the first thing people need to be thinking about. How can I get my message out? And if the only way, and I'm going to pick on you specifically since you said it, the only way that people know that you're open is having your A-frame out, I think that you personally, as a small business owner, have limited your options.
Not really. I've gotten on Channel 12. I've gotten on the front page of the Oregon City News. I've
I
got
know,
all these
I saw
different
that.
options, but still, people don't. Several people say we can't see you.
But
We
there's,
drive right by.
I know, but there's several people, not everybody.
I've had a lot of people, especially from Westland. I'm just saying that
Well,
it limits it for
Tom,
small
I'm
businesses.
curious, why would a open sign in your window not be more effective than an A-frame that you can't see?
Because the open
behind the
signs
car?
you have, I've already ordered an open sign, but it says open. It doesn't know what kind of business you are. And you'd have to go out and buy a big neon sign that says the name of your business so they know, oh, that's the business.
Right.
Especially, as you said, no one's been in that business for 3 years.
Well,
But
a
the-
retail business. There's
Yeah.
The
been-
conversation we had last week, or 2 weeks ago on this topic,
And I get it then, too.
is that, my personal opinion is the business owner thinks the A-frame's a lot more important than the consumer. Because I never pay attention to A-frame signs to find a business or determine whether it's open. If the sign in the window says open.
If
then
it
I
says
know it's
open, but it doesn't always identify what the business is either.
That's what I'm saying. As a consumer, I never pay attention to those A-frame signs to identify the business. So I think that a lot of business owners have a heightened value, a sense of value to those A-frames.
I disagree with you.
Because they're so low and they're behind cars. You don't see them unless you're walking down the street. And if you're walking down the street, you're going slow enough to see the business.
I know a really
Well-
neat artist who could paint the name of your business in your window.
He doesn't want that kind of stuff in
And
the windows.
I'm just telling
Who,
you,
the
this has
owner?
been my
Yeah.
opinion for
Well,
a
see, then I
long
think
time, way before
we
we've had
can't
this
help
I,
you.
conversation.
I understand.
The A-frame, in my opinion, is only useful if you're walking. If you're driving by, you do not have time to read that A-frame.
Because you got to be watching everybody else.
Okay.
Especially if it's behind
no,
cars.
Now, to be devil's advocate to that, my barber has an A-frame with a barber pole, and if the A-frame's out, I know they're open. Well, I don't care about the words, I know that they're open. And my barber's set way back off the road, basically in the backside of a parking lot, and it's blind for me to see until I'm there looking 90 degrees at it. My barber's A-frame is a valid, useful full use of the sign because I know. Now, the alternative, since Tony's over there like, well, they could just be on the blade sign that's right there and have an open and close that's right there on the street. But a small business owner can't necessarily afford to change a major sign in order to add themselves to it or to even pay the extra electrical to have their sign go on and off and open and close. So there's the flip side of it. My concern, though, is the plethora of signs you could conceivably have out under the business owner model versus property owner model.
And why not say something like every 30 feet or every 50 feet or something? How long is a city block rather than limit it to one for the whole block?
So if Dom Pepe's gets their sign out before the attorneys and Mia Familia and the other people within 30 feet of them, then, oh, well, too bad. It's still a bidding war over who gets their sign out.
Well, I think Mi Familia's never really had.
Oh, I know. I'm just
Yeah.
using that as an
Right.
example of 3 or 4 businesses in a tight area. You still end up in a bidding war over who's 30-foot, who gets their sign out and gets
Unless
their
they do
30-foot,
something where they trade off or something, but.
which they could do under the one per property owner.
So the only thing I could think of is if we go ahead with that, if you guys go ahead with it, because I definitely won't vote for it, but is to put a sign on top of my car on weekends and have it sitting out there on top of my car, because this doesn't say anything about right away. I'll just put it on my car out on the street.
We're discouraging business owners from parking in front of their own businesses.
Well, if that's
so
the only
that-
way I'm going to
so
bring
that
business
so
in,
the
I'll
public
do
can get
it.
there.
Because I can't park there.
I'll park my hearse out front and put a sign on top of the hearse.
I think that you are in a building that's the exception instead of the rule.
No, I'm saying, I'm speaking on behalf of all the small businesses. They need to draw attention to themselves too, all along that whole Main Street.
But I think some of the other small businesses apparently have more options than you do because they have signs in the windows. They have,
I have a sign on the window too.
well, you just told me you couldn't put one in the window.
I said I can't put one that's illuminated. You can say open, but still,
No, I meant like,
It's
can you paint the name of your,
you can't paint and do all that to his glass. That's a pretty big, huge sheet of glass. That was built in 1902, that building, and I'm not sure when they put the glass in, but I think everybody along that stretch, it's one long stretch, and unless you're trying to drive and look and look
I
for
don't-
businesses, I think people have a hard time finding
I
businesses.
want to be sympathetic with you, but there's the building that you're in, then there's a parking lot, and then there's another building.
So here's what we need to do is, I know this is difficult for you, but we need to disconnect this ordinance from your business.
I'm thinking about all the
No,
businesses, because I've asked them.
understand.
I've gone one by one, not everyone, but
What
I've
we
asked them what they think.
What we need to do is, we need to decide, are we locked into the idea of the one sign per property owner, or are we open to the idea?
Not property owner, it's one per property, right?
Frontage, yeah.
Frontage.
So-
Property frontage,
Frontage.
has nothing to do with the owner.
Property frontage, which is that if hypothetically a property frontage is the full block, then that would be one sign.
If it was.
But you would have, if it's a full block, then you would get one on the side street too.
Right.
Or the side.
So
one for
the
each side.
alternative to that would be to allow signs spaced at a periodic space in of, say, 50 feet, one sign per 50 feet. That would be an alternative that would accommodate multiple tenants in that block. And that was another discussion we had previously about allowing signages at a spacing. So you could have one A-frame per 50 feet on the block.
Well, I couldn't support that without actually physically seeing what that 50 feet is, because I don't know. I'm not a good judge of that, just in my head. I mean,
It's effectively the length of this room.
we spent a lot of time talking about
Yeah.
the fact that we did not, one of the things we wanted to try to project is an image of our community.
Right.
And sign clutter was one of the things we had
But
quite,
So Denise,
Yeah.
if like
Yeah.
Damon was just saying, if you can imagine a space, a length of the block that was equivalent to the length of this room, more or less,
Mhm.
that length would be entitled to one sign.
I don't have a problem with that.
So over the length of a full block, that would allow.
It depends if it's
a
under one ownership or not.
A 200-foot block, that would allow 4 signs for a 200-foot block. If it's a 100-foot block, it would be two
Okay,
signs.
well, is the only building that takes up a full, no, not even the Weinhardt building takes up a full block. Is there any building downtown that takes up a full block?
Would you like me to bring up a map?
Sure.
And are we in public discussion or public?
No, not yet.
hearing? Okay.
I'm just imagining in my brain, let's just say that each one of those panels is, along that wall is a storefront, and I can't imagine that there'd be
Most of them are small, like that.
yeah, a
and
sign
long.
being,
Well, some of the storefronts are 25 feet wide.
yeah, some of them are.
I don't believe there's any that are less than 25 feet wide.
But like
Yeah.
we said,
My
there
attorney's
are,
office is a doorway wide.
who is?
My attorney's office.
Yeah.
It's a
But-
doorway wide.
But they are a destination. They're not out there, get your wills this week for $5,
Right now, they're not, but
They
what
could.
if
Right.
they become a gemologist and he wants to advertise that he's there? So you can come and get your jewelry appraised.
I would look at a marquee on a building to find somebody like that. Because that's a destination.
I
mean,
just-
the only time personally I look at A-frames is to find out what band is playing in the bar or what they're having to eat for specials.
Or when their happy
Period.
hour is.
I don't check to see if they're going to be, I don't use that to check to see if they're going to be open. I look at the open or close sign. If I want to find out if somebody's open, I call them and I find out if they're open, and then I go.
If you're familiar
I
with
just-
a business, but if you're a new business, it's hard for people to find you.
But aren't
Well-
you listed?
Not yet, I'm new, still.
You're not listed.
A
If
month and a half
if I
old.
looked at the Google gallery on my phone, I wouldn't find it?
Probably not, it's not in there yet.
wanna-
Well, you're
Jonathan was
making it
just,
yes.
Jonathan was just back there adding me to his list tonight.
You're just making it really darn hard to come up with solutions for you when you keep saying, no, I
I'm
can't do
talking
that. I
about
can't."
everybody, not just me.
I'm talking about you. I'm not talking about everybody else. You're telling me that you can't do these things, and that's what I'm having my frustration about. Then I think you're in the wrong building.
So,
Can we get back to the
Yes, sir.
policy question?
Yes.
please?
so just to be clear on, this, each one of the little
The gray.
lines,
The gray thing is a building.
Those
Well-
are property frontages. Or each property is.
20 feet.
Is the gray the building?
yeah.
Generally.
Yeah. And so the tan or brown, that's like, well, the tint, that's the parking lot. So, yeah.
Well, what I'm asking is, are each one of those separate property owner tax lots?
So they would each get their own sign.
Even if it's the same person that owns all three tax lots?
Correct.
Okay.
It's per
So
property frontage,
here
not
would
I
have-
ownership.
understand, I'm getting it on the record.
So
And this is the
So-
courthouse.
for
Yeah.
reference,
This is where he is.
for reference sake, what is the distance between the cross streets to Main Street?
I forget how big our blocks are. I used to know that.
It
by
looks like
heart.
200 feet.
They're 200?
100 feet between the alleys.
175.
273, including the alley.
On that one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What's that
It'd be
one?
pretty close to the same because they're gonna, yeah.
Ooh, 267.
Well,
It's a little off. Maybe
don't, there's no
Or is that
precision.
287? I
Well,
can't tell if it's an eight.
precision on this is not
It's
so
a-
very.
Well, it's
About
close. It's close.
270-ish.
Yeah, 270-ish.
And I got handed a note that the length of this room is actually 27 feet long.
Yeah, I was going to say, it didn't look like it was 500 feet. That,
You said
No,
50.
nobody said 500, we said 50 feet.
oh, 50, okay.
So
So in that particular block, you would be allowed to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6
Well,
signs.
That's a parking lot, so that,
Yeah, but
why
they-
do
Well-
they need an A-frame sign for a parking lot?
Because they're selling it to somebody.
If that was a business. So-
Right, okay, so
And then
assuming-
across the street, you'd be allowed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, 7.
7.
Seven
Seven.
across on the other side of the street, based on the one per property owner
No, not owner, property frontage.
Property frontage.
Yeah, it's not by ownership.
Property
What are you
frontage.
defining as property? You defining that as a business, or you defining it as the
No,
owner?
property is the tax lot, not the business owner.
So each
or-
one of those that Charles is counting
Yes.
is a tax lot, each one of those little squares right there?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Those are tax lots.
those are tax lots.
So you could
That would be a
conceivably-
property frontage.
Yeah.
Yet that's owned by one person probably.
Doesn't
It doesn't
matter.
matter who owns it, we're talking about property frontage, not ownership.
So the next block, you have 3 property
And-
frontages.
Do we maybe
On
want
both
to
sides of the
just say by
street.
tax lot frontage rather than property owner or property frontage? Because I think if we say tax lot frontage, then we're clear.
We try and stick by property frontage in a lot of
Right.
places in our code because it's easy to create a tax lot.
Exactly.
They expand
Yeah.
and contract.
And it may not be a legal
And some
lot. and they get
buildings
bought
may
or
cover
sold,
more
it's
than one
confusing.
tax lot,
So the next
Okay.
block,
That's
which
fine, I
is
just-
odd, but.
Yeah, no,
the
it's a good
block
question.
that's west of 6th Street, you'd
Which one are
have
you
one,
The
Yeah.
one
one,
on the
2,
curve.
3, 4, 5, 6 on that side, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on that side.
Mhm.
So
It's
most
5
most of these, is that 5?
Yeah.
It's clear to me that there's enough.
Most of these
Frontages.
you're
I think-
getting
I think there is enough frontage.
5 or 6 on every one of these blocks, except for the block between 6th and 7th, where you've got 3 on either side. The rest of these you're getting, except for the courthouse block. All the rest you're getting,
Well, they could only have one.
Well, the courthouse isn't going to have one.
yeah, that's a different animal.
Yeah, open or closed.
Yeah.
Need to know where the court's in
Time for,
session.
time for juries. All sheriffs meet here.
Or, well, actually, they do have the sign that says juries and points to the door that the
Okay,
juries
well,
are supposed to go.
That's on the other.
We've spent more than enough time on this at this point, so.
So does that,
just let
is
it-
that clear that it's?
It's clear now that
That
we've
it's
talked about it.
frontage, not property
Well,
ownership?
as Charles put it, by doing it each tax lot, I can understand that, yes.
So that's one scenario. So with that scenario, we're looking at 6 or 7 for most of these blocks, except for the one between 6th and 7th Streets, which you get 3 on either side. The alternative is to go by the one sign per 50-foot rule or something like that.
Which
and
actually cuts
you
off
actually
some people.
don't get as many signs on some of these blocks. You may get an additional sign on a couple blocks, but most of them you would not gain any signage by doing that. So I think I'm inclined to go with the property frontage, because that's a real simple way to identify it. If you start getting into arbitrary measurements, now you got to get your tape measure out and figure out
Right.
if you're in the right
It's
range.
too hard to enforce.
So the enforcement's a lot easier if you just say it's property frontage, and you know that's how many signs you're entitled to at that location.
I mean, the only gripe I could see is been brought up is that, for instance, the Weinhardt building has 3 businesses in it, and maybe 4 now, not counting the offices upstairs. But, you know, again, there's information on their door. If you need to go see so-and-so upstairs, that's where they are, and you're going to make
You
an
know,
appointment with them.
What I go back to is the A-frame sign is one sign type that is available
There are
out of
multiple.
a menu of half a dozen different sign types. So if you're in a situation and hypothetically your building owner restricts you from putting signs on your awning, you still have the ability to have a blade sign or a window sign or some other form of sign. Or you can negotiate with your building owner to say, 3 days a week, I get my A-frame, and the other 3 days a week, the other guy gets his A-frame. So you get into a negotiation with your business owner, or maybe
Building owner.
a building owner, who gets what.
And I wanted to clarify that, in that particular building where I'm located, that's why I was not trying to make it about me, even though it ended up being about me, was the fact that nobody else, the executive copy printers, doesn't need to do anything, neither does the detectives or the attorneys. So that whole block, I'm not actually referring to it, but that is an old building, and the landowner has said, I don't want to make this look cheap by having lots of painting. I don't want the building facade being changed because it's a historical building, like most of them downtown are. So that's why there was a limit on what you could do, but I'm the only one that would ever put up an A-frame there, probably. But I was thinking of all the other businesses too, that defending their rights to have something up. But as long as Charles has explained it the way he did, that each of those is a separate tax lot, in my estimation, I thought the owners own that whole entire block down there, as I've heard on several occasions.
And I think if we look at it from the standpoint that you've got a box of tools, so to speak, you've got a whole range of different signs that are available for each block, and what may be appropriate on one frontage is not appropriate on the next.
Right.
So on your particular building, you may have to have an alternative sign type to be compliant with what your property owner is willing to allow, which may be different from the
Next guy.
building
Right.
over. So I would tend to go with the language that we have.
All right, so we're putting that one to bed.
Okay.
Well, not necessarily.
We have lots of other parts of the sign code to talk about tonight. Are we done talking about this topic?
I-
I
We
don't
have,
wanna talk
I think
about
we have
A-frames
4
anymore.
people that want to have the,
Okay. Well, I will hold my questions till after public testimony
yeah.
then.
Are we ready to take public testimony?
Yep.
Bring it on.
Okay. So,
Just everybody come up.
right now, I have one person signed up to speak. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? If you do, please turn in your sign to.
Your side.
Yes, turn in your sign.
Your
That's
sign,
right.
Your
What's that song?
your form,
Sign,
your
sign,
comment
everywhere
form
sign.
to Ms. Turway. And the first person signed up to speak is Jonathan Stone.
Don't worry, I won't start dancing.
You've been amazingly patient, John. Thank you.
It's too early for that.
Jonathan Stone, I'm the Executive Director for Downtown Oregon City Association and a resident of Oregon City. I'm just speaking for like 10 seconds on the A-frame issue, as you guys have the map in front of you. Yes, most buildings downtown are not impacted by the tax lot measure, but there are several that are. And so if you look at the map here, if the Weinhard building was similarly delineated in terms of the way tax lots are, maybe between 7th and 8th, this would be a non-issue, and every business in that building would be able to have an A-frame under the proposed code. But because it's not similarly delineated from a spacing standpoint in terms of tax lot dimensions, therefore they get restricted differently than other businesses throughout the district. And so there was a comment about what does 50 feet look like. This room is 23 feet wide. And so
Wide or long?
27 long, I think I got.
27 long, 23 feet wide. And I believe if you do on average the number of entrances, using the Busch Whitehart as an example, if everybody decided to have an A-frame, they would end up being somewhere similarly to 25 feet or more apart. So you're not going to end up with the sign clutter that I think you're afraid of if you change the measurement to primary business entrance, because not everyone, like Tom points out, uses them. And so in his case, Tom will probably be the one that gets the sign because ECP doesn't want it, or the other one, the attorneys don't want it, the crime control doesn't want it. But in the case of the Busch building, I know for a fact that Nebbiolo would like an A-frame, that Busch's would like an A-frame, and that McNulty's would like an A-frame. And so with the proposed code, you're going to disproportionately affect those 3 businesses versus other businesses that happen to be in tax lots that are delineated differently. So that's my point.
And I'll just point of clarification, this room is 30 feet long, not
feet?
27.
Oh, okay.
Not 27.
I was trying to base it on the dimension of the tile.
That's what I just did.
Okay.
I have
So-
my handy dandy paper here.
Even longer than I
In
said it
any
was.
case.
Thank you.
Is that it? Yes. Okay. The next person to speak is Daryl
Wynand.
Wynand.
Good evening. I know how much you all want to talk about A-frames.
We don't.
I am Daryl Wynand, the Governmental Affairs Specialist with the Portland Metropolitan Association of Realtors, and just want to thank the city for allowing us to participate in this endeavor, and specifically Delora for keeping us apprised of everything that's going on. You should have received my letter of testimony. We appreciate the ancillary signs. Is that what they're called?
Yep.
I only have 26 cities I follow, so ancillary signs, and the use of an A-frame on as one of those signs on private property. But also talking about the need to have that open sign, that A-frame in the public right-of-way in a residential zone when that house is not only available for sale, but can visibly be seen for landscaping purposes. If there's a hedge, if there's a fence, and you have it on the property itself, no one's going to see for that 2-hour time frame that that house is now readily available to be viewed. And so we would encourage you to reconsider exempting those within residential zones. Other than that, I am available to answer any questions.
I'm
You have a
not
question?
quite sure what you just said, so you want to slow down
Certainly,
and
certainly. In residential areas, there are homes that have hedges.
Yeah, I understand
and
that there could be
fences.
things blocking it from being on the private side. So what signs are you talking
The
about? in right-
A-frame open house sign.
Okay.
Specifically.
And our code requires you to get a permit, well, will require you to get a permit to put it in the right of way.
Correct.
Okay, and your letter says you'd like to not have to get a permit to put it in the right of way because it's only there for a short amount of time and you really don't have any place else sometimes.
That is correct.
Okay. But wouldn't they be able to get a permit as a company to put one out, like, Acme Home Sales? We could then get a permit to have an A-frame in the right of way, and then Tuesday it's on 5th and Madison, and on Wednesday it's on 9th and Jefferson, and they've got their sign and they can put it out because they have a permit to have an A-frame sign, or does a permit have a specific location that it has to be?
At this point, we were thinking that it would have a specific location because then we would make sure that it met the 4-foot clearance and it met all those criteria.
So the permit would be site-specific.
The permit would be site-specific. So the city commission adopts the fees, but in our code, it says you need permits for all signs except for, and it exempts a certain amount of signs. So it says you need a permit for signs in the right-of-way and adjacent to residential. So we would have to change the language in the code to say you wouldn't need permits in front of residential, or in residential zoning designations.
Except then A-frames can crop up all through the residential. And the downside is, just so you understand where we've come with it, we can't regulate content. So we can't say open house, real estate open house signs don't require permit because we can't read it to know that that's what it says. So we don't know if it isn't puppies for sale or blacksmith shop now open or car repairs for you or whatever. So that the way we can regulate the proliferation of those signs is through a permitting process.
And understanding your concerns, Commissioner, the open house sign would be for such a limited amount of time and for a duration that you would establish, for 10 to 2, 10 to 3.
You don't have to
whatever.
convince me.
Yeah.
I think that those signs, as we have it in the code now, and political signs, should be exempt. They're temporary signs. They're only going to be there for a short period of time. And I will have to say honestly that I appreciate the fact that when realtors have open houses, they come and pick up their signs, they're there, and then they're gone. I can't say that for a lot of the business owners, that somehow they end up being there all night, blow into the street, other things happen to them.
Or the political signs.
They're
Costly.
yeah, and I wouldn't want to lose one of those having to pay for it. So I am in your corner. I agree with what you're saying in the sense that, again, they're not there all the time. You're not having an open house 24/7. They're not like garage sale signs, which somehow go up and never seem to come down. And we had asked about if there was a way that we could classify those as temporary signs. So when we get to the other part of the question, I will ask that question again. So I don't disagree with you.
I just have a problem trying to come up with some sort of way to frame the timing. We can't say for 4 hours because we don't know when Acme Auto Repair put theirs out. I mean, if we said 10 to 2, we could conceivably end up with lots of signs up between 10 and 2.
How about Saturdays and Sundays? That's when open houses usually occur.
Typically Saturday and Sundays
Yeah.
between the hours of 10 and 4.
Right.
And
We've worked with Daryl to come up with the hours that are in the code. So for signs within residential zoning designations, they can be displayed Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday between noon and 8 p.m. and from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Tuesdays. So they're very limited
didn't get
hours on
that.
only specific
Tuesdays
days.
they have their
It's the same as, you
Walk
want to
through.
talk
Fine.
about the hours?
Tuesdays they have
certainly
what?
Tuesdays we have the broker opens.
yes, they
Oh.
And so it's just an easy way to see that
I
house
was like,
is.
why
yeah,
Tuesday?
Why
Is
Tuesday?
that like the
Yeah,
magic?
but 6 a.m. was a-
Those
And,
hours.
and those
seem
were the
to be-
hours that we
Okay.
recommended, and that the only thing that changed in this is that that temporary portable sign was not exempt any longer. So the language that you have there is the one that we proposed.
You always have broker open houses on Tuesdays?
Yes,
kind of
typically
a
a
slow day.
Tuesday, sales meetings,
Yeah. Oh,
slow
okay.
day.
Weekends are too busy, so on Tuesdays they go out and see the homes.
So we could change the language to not require permits in residential, but it would still be subject to the same code requirements, or we could keep the language and they would still need permits for residential signs in the right
I
of
mean,
way.
I agree with Damon. I have no, it's a cutting edge, because I'm the one that doesn't want to see everybody and their dog all of a sudden now putting out A-frame signs all over the residential neighborhoods. And I don't want that. But the signs that you're talking about to me are in a completely different category. It's sort of the everything else.
So will those realty signs be obligated to pay a fee, also a permit fee to be used?
That's what it is currently.
So
Which I think
we
is
allow ancillary signs, which are signs less than 6 square feet. So like a sign on your lawn that's basically a normal for sale sign. You get 2 of those without a permit on residential property. So if it wants to be a political sign or a for sale sign, you don't need a permit for it, but we do regulate the size of it.
But the A-frames that he's referring to about open houses, would they have a permit fee attached to those?
Not if it was on private property.
Right.
It's it
The
could be
the issue
considered-
is that it's
It's in
in
the
the
public
public.
right
Right,
away.
right. I was wondering
Like
if they
it's on a
did have to
corner
put it in the right of way,
lane.
would there be a fee required for that? for the
So
realtors?
we haven't adopted the fee schedule yet. That goes to the city commission. So I don't know what that will be yet for signs in the right of way.
You know, just after kind of thinking about the hours that is proposed, I almost think that we should just let them be non-permitted, because, you know, during those hours, for the simple reason, everybody and their mother's got unpermitted garage sale signs and estate sale signs and everything, and trying to regulate those, you know, we're going to have somebody driving around every Saturday collecting permit fees from all the, you know, and you see all sorts of, they're stapled to things, they're boxes stuck on the corner.
Nailed to trees in our neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah, you should just
it's
rip
just a
those off.
simpler, you know, solution to just say, look, things are going to go crazy on the weekend, and then they're going to calm down. The flip side of that is, do we want our neighborhoods to look messy on the weekends and clean during the week, when weekends is when people visit our neighborhoods? So, I mean, that's
Well,
that's
again,
the
we're
two-
talking about signs in the public right of way,
Mhm.
because right now, signs on telephone poles, traffic control devices, and other
No, I
things like
understand.
that are allowed. Period. And people go around taping duct tape on the nice
Trees.
black poles that we have in the different parts of the neighborhood. It's just, you know,
That's how you define it as a temporary sign. It's duct tape.
it's duct taped on there.
It
Yeah.
wasn't permanently attached.
Well, that's permanently attached with a piece of duct tape.
Well, and to Commissioner Gall's comment about the permitting, the process could easily be that you want to list your home on Friday night and you don't have your permitting office open until Monday and you want that open house on Sunday. yeah, it could be any number of circumstances that would be.
And we live on the wild side.
Right. Well, I'm okay personally with the temporary signs that we've talked about for
With the hours and not permitted.
the limited hours not being permitted.
Can I ask a question about that, Damon?
Not requiring a permit, because if you say not permitted,
Not
it
requiring
means we don't want them.
a permit.
A further question on what Damon said and what you were also saying. Let's use Park Place as an example. Maybe it happens in McLaughlin. We have that nice Welcome to Park Place sign.
yes.
People are nailing things to that, to the trees.
That's-
We've had to go and clean that up
Yeah.
after a weekend.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if those signs are still up, if that's something we could turn into for permits, say, sorry, you've left it up longer than the
No,
weekend.
because it's state right of way. They're not allowed in the state
On that
right of
particular
way.
one, but when
That
you're putting them
particular
on,
piece.
on signs like the McLaughlin neighborhood sign, would that be a state?
Nobody's put anything on that
So
sign, I'm
far.
telling you, because if they do, they're gonna,
Well-
there's gonna be trouble.
But what I'm asking is if people leave up their signs for garage sales like they do and the messes for these neighborhoods, can that be a fine if they're left up for days after a
If you can
weekend?
find them.
So we haven't finished our proposed fees yet, but we were pondering a proposed fee for if you put up a sign only within the right of way and we collect it because it's not permitted, we would hold it for 30 days, and if you want it back, you would pay $50. To
Sounds like you'd be doing the cleanup for garage
so,
sales.
just to make sure that we don't get the same things over and over.
Yeah.
That just,
Have
which is what happened when we
responsibility,
were more active in
Yeah.
enforcing the sign code. We would just get the same ones that they just took it back and put it back up. So
Good.
Okay.
Just wondering.
Thank you.
If somebody posted a sign on that McLaughlin neighborhood sign, they would.
The next person who is signed up to speak is Tom O'Brien.
Onto it.
I know, and that's a sign the city paid for.
I know.
Put that up there.
Good evening.
Hi,
Good
Tom.
evening. Tom O'Brien, Oregon City. We're trying to encourage business in the city, and I think that sale of homes is very important. One of the things that, in my own history, I have moved around the country a bit. In 2 occasions, both in Lake Oswego and in Vadnais Heights, Minnesota, I had corner lots. And it was common practice on both of those lots that realtors would come and they would place an A-frame directional type of a sign, open house down at the end of the block. Knowing that, I would suggest that a consideration be given. Most realtors are professional and would be not terribly put out to have a permit that was a floating type of a permit, allowing them to not have to designate where it is going, but rather, if it's more advantageous to have it on the corner or in front of the house in the right-of-way, there is a need to have them in the right-of-way. And I recognize that. And I think we have to make it simple and easy for them to do business in our city. So I would suggest consideration of, the same fee as anyone would pay for an A-frame sign, but allow them to place it where it's going to do the most good for their business. And I don't know how we do that without being content specific. Perhaps the attorney can give some thoughts on that.
Well, what's your thought about just not worrying about a permit during those hours, those restrictive hours?
It gets down to the concerns that Denise has. I know there's one particular place in our area where one of the neighbors has spoken up a number of times regarding the garage sale signs that are prolific on his property. They never come down. He has to physically go out and remove them. And, I don't know how we control that other than as neighborhood associations, we go out and police our own neighborhoods.
I've done that.
And, it does happen, I can tell you.
Yeah.
But
I'm aware of there's some cadres of neighbors who do that.
Yes.
And bless their hearts.
yes, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I think everyone in the audience has spoken.
Jackie wander off.
Jackie
Yep.
left.
Just not here. So we'll close the public testimony portion of the meeting and Are we going to go through the proposed text of the legislative changes?
Under the impression that the work sessions,
Yeah,
we'd address everything.
We've already done that.
I'm wondering, is there anything else that we need to cover?
Just to clarify the decisions that we made tonight, that right of A-frames in the right-of-way in residentials don't require a permit during those restrictive hours. That we're sticking with the property frontage for A-frames in commercial, so it's by tax lot, just to use a simple shorthand.
Property.
And what was the third one?
Public art mural.
Oh, yeah.
Public art mural.
I guess we're going to put the word art in. Is that the consensus?
I can go either way.
6 and 1, half a dozen.
I don't feel a need for it, but if it makes people more comfortable, we'll add the word art. And then other than that, it's everything that hit our desks.
Any other comments?
I have a number of questions, if
Okay.
I may.
Okay.
Go for it.
I'll just go on page 4. I think it's the same page 4. You have a permit application. So is there my question on the side here says, why 90 days? So you're saying that you're giving somebody 90 days, which is 3 months to get a sign up? It just seems like a really long period of time.
So we're saying that the sign permit is valid for 90 days. If they don't put up the sign within the 90 days, the sign permit's no longer valid. And then once the sign
And
goes
that's from
up,
the date
then
of
it's-
issue?
That's right. Yep.
I'm assuming-
90 days following the date of its issuance.
So then does it-
excluding any appeals.
So does it expire after the 90 days? Can they get an extension?
There's no place for an extension.
Okay.
Just that it's void if the sign's not constructed in
Constructed,
accordance
okay.
with the approval.
And then, I think I asked this before, but I couldn't find it in my notes, so we talked about, and I'll admit, I'm sorry, Jennifer, I hate content neutral, so under number 4B, we talk about flags. And then Damon said, well, what if he puts up his family flag or whatever flag? So we're just talking about,
We allow flags, no matter what. But we prohibit,
well, yeah, I know about
Attention flags.
Yeah, I know the prohibited ones, so, I'm just trying to think like an ordinary and regular person. When I think of a flag, I'm thinking of, a state flag, or the American flag, or the state of Oregon flag, or a
Service flag.
service flag, or
Jolly Roger.
Jolly Roger flag.
I was going to ask that, thank you.
You can you put up a flag?
Probably.
There you go. That's how you're going to advertise. The name of the Gould Gallery, and it says it's a flag.
so we did add that we prohibit flags that exceed 60 square feet.
Okay, you can't have one bigger than 60 square feet.
So we're
I'm
not going to have a
trying,
bunch
Tom.
of lattice motor flags flying.
That's a Hurricane flag. I don't think we have a definition in here for Hurricane flag.
No, it's actually a battle flag is the technical definition of it.
What else you got?
The Lattice Motors flag is a battle flag?
Yeah, that's what the flag that you would fly off the main mast of the ship when you go into battle.
I think that's bigger than a ship.
No, that'd be a carrier.
Let's keep going with this.
Okay.
What else do we have?
Do we have anywhere that talks about tying signs in residential districts regarding, because I asked this before, home occupations? So is there a specific requirement in here that says if you have a home occupation, you can have X sign?
So our code doesn't, so it's currently our code allows you to have a freestanding sign or a wall sign and then some temporary signs and some flags for home occupations.
It's pretty good.
This current code, we didn't change anything with our definition of home occupation, which doesn't talk about signage, but we did change the sign types allowed. We took away the freestanding sign in residential from our work session. So it would allow either a wall sign or a projecting sign and then a couple of small signs. So if you want to do your for sale sign or a political sign, you can get 2 signs under 6 square feet or a flag or something like that.
That's plenty.
You have that diagram? You can put
Yeah,
on the screen.
actually. Since you did all that graphic arts work, we gotta,
We have to keep showing it. And you're using the words A-frame and sandwich board interchangeably? I kept seeing it referred to all over the place, and I said, okay, we're talking about a sandwich board, or we're talking about an A-frame, so.
Why are we doing that?
It should talk about A-frames, but I thought it says in the signs in the right-of-way, it says A-frame or sandwich board design.
well, technically a sandwich board has meat in the middle, i.e. a person is wearing it.
Yeah, sandwich board
The
is,
definition of an A-frame, we acknowledge it's also identified as a sandwich board or a tent sign.
Okay.
Essentially a movable, steeply angled sign.
okay, so these
But
are
in the code mainly, it talks about A-frame, other
So
than
the-
that part where we're
the
describing
graphic
what we're
that
talking
Laura's
about.
got
Yes.
defines the signs that are permitted in residential, single-family zones.
Whoops.
Oh, I just lost you.
There. Well,
You know, we were just fine with this.
We were
I was trying to
perfectly
make it
fine.
nicer. Sorry about that.
And I'm glad it's not to scale, because if I saw a wall sign on a house in my neighborhood like that, I would be having a complete cow about it, I can
I'd
tell
be
you right
more
then.
concerned about the two ancillary signs.
Yeah.
Yes, well,
Yeah,
that's
me
what
too.
I'm concerned about as well.
Okay, what else you got?
Okay, I just saw, to tell you the truth, in all this, I only saw one typo, and it's on page 7, and it's number 3, where it says signs projecting into the right-of-way shall receive. That is the only typo I found. I wasn't even looking for it. The word receive. I before E, except after C.
Okay.
She gets very detailed.
Except when it's A is in
Okay,
neighbor
page
and
9. I'm still having a hard time with the whole thing with the banners. So are these banners that we're talking about, are these temporary until they get a permanent sign, or they can have a permanent sign and then they can have banners all over the place, or what are we talking about?
1 second. I'm just
You have it
wanna s-
under ancillary.
So you get 2 ancillary signs, and ancillary, there's a toolbox or menu
Right,
you
so
can
one
pick
of
for
them could be a
ancillary.
banner.
One could be a banner. If you pick a banner, then you can get a banner up to 30 days per shot, twice a year.
Okay.
So at the very most, you only have a banner up for 60 days out of the
Okay.
year.
So you can have like grand opening and
I
Christmas.
appreciate
sale.
under 2, it's G, I think, G2D, that you refer to historic districts. So are there other locations I didn't see in the code, for instance, some of the McLaughlin Conservation District has a commercial zoning. And is there any reference there? Because what I don't want to have happen is somebody just assume, oh, I'm zoned MUC, and so I can have this, but there's no references that, except if you are in this particular district. And I know in the previous code, we had that every place that it might happen. There's also some commercial in Kenema, and that has a different requirement as well. So it really should be, called out, so that if someone reads this, or if a sign professional reads this, they know that, if I'm going to open my dentist's office on Center Street, oh, wait a minute, I'm in the MUC zone, but I may be in a historic district, and my sign code requirements are different than what it says in the rest of the code.
So you're happy?
No, I'm saying I want to make sure that is in there, and I did
Yes.
not.
So under the last one, D, banners are
No,
prohibited within.
not just that one. In commercial zones, is it listed separately? I didn't see it.
Yep, that's under the commercial zone. part
Okay.
Yeah, I
for-
think it's like the last item. I thought I saw
It's
it.
it's a long one, that
I
section.
know, I just want to make sure it was pretty clear.
Oh, yeah, so it's also listed, that's on page 9 is conditional uses, the residential zone is prohibited there too. Under commercial, it is listed on page 12, also the last one. They're in the
Okay.
same order.
And what about in the residential zones?
We don't allow banners.
Okay.
Yeah, she just said it was prohibited.
Yeah, okay, that takes care of that.
Mm.
But again, so if I'm, you know, Our Lady of Perpetual Responsibility, and I want to put up a new sign. I'm in the R3.5 zone in the McLaughlin Conservation District, and I'm already existing. Am I going to be able to look at this code and say, oh, wait a minute, I'm in a historic district, my sign code requirements are different, and it has to go through a different process?
I hope so, and I hope the sign people that you hire can. It's referenced a few places throughout about historic districts, but what we're doing right now is putting together some information sheets so that the code can be more easily translated. So
I
you don't
know
have
it's
to get
more
this
ink,
20
but I
page.
just want it to be perfectly
Right.
clear.
So we're working on promotional or informational sheets that will make it very clear, and here's the items that you need to know, and here are things that you need to check, and that's very clear on there as well.
And I do appreciate the fact that we're not allowing banners on fences, because of course after the big windstorm you go up by Eastham School and they're all kind of just, it's just a sloppy mess, and it irritates the bejesus out of me every time I drive up there and see all those.
Go clean it up.
Okay, what else you got?
On roof signs on page 11, you're being very restrictive about them, which I think is really good. But I thought I saw somewhere where you were not requiring any engineering, but that you're doing that as part of the building permit?
So building permits are required anyway, and
Right.
our language had talked about some building permits, so what do we do?
I'd be loath to put a sign up on a flat roof anyway, because it's problematic if you have to drill through the
Can I ask a question about that?
roof. A roof sign?
I see one downtown that's hanging off the side of a roof. It's big 2x4s, and it's like maybe 8x8 signs, something about for lease or for sale on one of the sides of the building, but it's off the top of the roof. Is that what you call a roof sign, or is that under these new recommendations? Is that even allowed? It's quite large, but it hangs off the roof.
So we have a definition of roof sign that says it's fully supported by the roof, or the structure is fully supported by the roof. We have language in here about if it's a wall sign stuck on the wall, how high it can stick up above the wall, and how far it can project outside the wall. So you can go up to a foot, and then you're projecting sign, and then you have those rules, or you can go up to a foot above if you're a wall sign too. So we should be clear.
Yeah.
So we do have standards. For what
Okay,
it
just
needs to
I'd
be.
ask, since
So
you was
that
asking
sign
about
is a
that.
wall sign.
Well, it's actually hanging, it's attached to the roof, and it's hanging over the
Right.
side with a,
But
like.
that
a-
is a wall sign.
Okay.
It's not a roof sign.
It's not
Like
attached
it
to
would
the
be a
wall.
projecting sign if it's
No,
coming off
If
the,
it's hanging, they're using the parapet to support the sign.
Yeah.
that hangs
but
over
it's-
onto the wall.
It's on the wall,
Okay.
so that's a wall sign. If it's above the roof, then it's a roof sign.
Okay.
A
Just was wondering.
projecting sign is sticking out from the wall.
And it is.
Mhm.
It's
But
but
it's-
it's
but
support,
there's-
it's supported out like
By the
about 2
roof,
feet.
yeah. Okay. Then on
It'd be a projecting sign.
16B, you have crossed out however, signs placed within the right-of-way shall not obstruct traffic control signs or devices.
What page are you on?
16B, it's crossed out, so is there a reason why
We
that's
moved it.
crossed out?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The version that went on didn't have comments on it, but we moved it around.
Is it someplace else?
Yes.
I mean, I don't think they should be obstructing a,
It's in that
It's in 3.
highlighted
Okay.
language below it.
I was thinking about 2 weeks ago, somebody taped a huge poster board to the traffic signal, and it was like flapping all over the place, and I was thinking, okay, that's not, yeah. It's gone now, don't worry. Somebody took it off, wasn't me.
Okay, what else you got?
Page 17, do we have anything regarding the portable signs that they have to be brought in? They need to be not there? Is that the sign hours is going to take care of that?
Well, the sign hours is.
Okay.
And then
until-
we do have a separate place that says that they're portable and not anchored.
Okay.
What do you mean by portable? On the
And they have
sides
to
of
be the
trucks,
A-frame design.
parked all over the street?
Well, yeah, signs on trucks are not considered portable signs.
We don't regulate signs on cars. We looked into it quite a bit.
We just towed the
in the
car away.
research part of it.
A lot of campaign
They're
signs this year.
Yeah,
It's too
that
tricky
was
when
disgusting.
you regulate an OSU sticker and.
Okay, let's see.
Do you ever sleep at night, or do you just sit and make all these notes and read all this in detail?
I try to, as soon as they send me the stuff, make time so that I can read this and be informed, because we got a good compliment from the City Commission about how thorough we were with the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. They said we did all the hard, heavy lifting, so they didn't have to.
Okay,
We
what you
really
got
appreciate
there?
it. I know this packet was very large with all of those attachments.
What do you have there?
Oh, I was just reading your comment on 20, where you say proposed change to existing code prohibited signs, and then I put, my notes said do we prefer sandwich boards or A-frames, and Tony answered that question.
Okay, what else?
A non-conforming sign. Again, I just wrote a question about 90 days. Damaged non-conforming sign that cannot be repaired shall be removed within 90 days of the date the sign was damaged.
What's the question?
The question is 90 days too much?
Well, given the logistics of hiring somebody, designing the sign, getting it printed and constructed, that doesn't seem too much to me.
Okay, it's just a question. And then on the last one on that page, you have F, you have abandoned signs shall not be deemed non-conforming signs. So abandoned signs are just abandoned signs, and then they are going to go away.
Yeah, because they're listed specifically as prohibited, and then we have a definition of abandoned signs as well that says that there is no sign faced for 6 months or longer.
Okay, so what are we doing about non-conforming signs?
We are, the current
Existing
draft
signs are
says,
allowed to remain unless removed by the owner. The previous code included an amortization period.
Yeah, and that was my last, not my last question, but that was a big question on the front page was, I thought we were very specific about the fact that we wanted the ones that are non-conforming, that don't meet the code, if they don't bring them into compliance, they need to go away.
Yeah.
And they need,
so
we
if they
wanted
were.
people to have some time frame that they were going to go away. So the 90 days is the time frame?
So from my understanding, if they were legally constructed, then they can stay under the non-conforming code. So the ones that are illegal or don't meet that non-conforming code, we did not include any timeline in our code by which they have to be removed. I know we sort of talked about it at the work session.
Well, the last time I remember we talked about this is that if the sign was legal when it was originally built, even if it's non-conforming
But they
now,
have, yeah,
it would
we
be
had no
allowed.
problem with that because they'll
Right.
come, they have to show that they have a permit.
But if it was never conforming
Then it needs to go
when it was
away.
originally built, then that needed to be taken away.
Right, and I wanted to make sure there was some provision in here that they are going to go away. Not that they're abandoned, but if they are non-conforming and there was no permit and they can't prove that there was a permit, which is, it's not our burden to prove that they had a permit. We do have some permits here at the city that we could look up, but they can't find a permit, then it needs to go away.
So we're working on a program of how to address all of the illegal signs once we adopt the new sign code. And
It comes back to what we've said from the very first comment, enforcement. If
If
we
they
don't
meet-
have enforcement, it's
This is just,
irrelevant.
yeah,
so-
this is, it's just ridiculous.
And that's fine, but that's the city commission's job. to
Right,
put
and
that together.
I think the key there was we agreed that if it was legal when it was originally built,
Yeah.
that it can stay
Legal then, legal now.
until it's either,
Becomes non-conforming or abandoned or
well,
whatever.
it's either abandoned or modified.
Yeah.
or if it's damaged
Right.
in a significant way.
I'm concerned that that's not with this, and that it's gonna get decoupled, and it's not gonna happen. And we're gonna end up the same place that we are now, which is we've got all these signs out there in the community that are not meeting requirements, and, you know, some of them are in bad shape, some of them are in okay shape, but again, it gets back to that whole conversation we had about what is the image that we want to project
Right.
from
Well,
our community.
I don't think we need to
Yeah.
really have any more discussion.
No, I'm just saying, it goes back to that. So when do we anticipate having that?
We expected that there would be language that would say that signs that were not legally built that are non-conforming would need to be either removed or made to be conforming within a certain time frame.
No, they just need to be removed.
Well, 90 days or
Well,
something.
They may
no,
not
they
be
just
able
need
to
to
be
be
conforming,
done.
but yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is without enforcement, we won't know whether it's done or not.
Right.
So the enforcement officer will knock on the door and say, your sign's non-conforming, show a permit or modify it to meet the thing. And then it'll be up to the enforcement officer to come back and go, what's being done? Oh, you have a permit. Thank you. I'll move on. Oh, you don't have a permit. What's your plan of action?
Right. And so I think the point is that what Denise is saying is this non-conforming regulation does not address that.
The non-conforming addresses the
Legal.
the legality of the sign.
Mhm.
You guys are talking policy concerning the implementation.
Yep.
It's illegal, it's illegal, it's illegal. It doesn't matter if it's yesterday, 2 days from now, or 2 years from now.
2 years
So,
from now, it might be legal.
You know, I'd recommend that you make a recommendation to the city commission. Codifying it, as we've shown, isn't the issue.
Yep.
It's the implementation component.
It's all about
It's
the
really a
enforcement.
policy decision.
So
had-
can we
had
attach-
10-year amortization in the last code.
Can we
It's not
attach our-
enforced.
Can we
Like we-
attach that as part of our
Recommendation.
recommendation to the
Well, I
commission?
think we've already been very clear that.
Yeah, no, I
that-
mean, I'd like that to be a formal part of when we recommend this for approval to the city council, that
Certainly,
they,
yeah.
that they
I
hear
just-
that.
I think, you know, we can certainly, if we want to put 6 months, 9 months, 90 days, 2 years, what do we want to put, we can put it in the code, but the question really becomes, it's illegal.
Right, and I think the burden of proof needs to be on the owner of the sign to either say, I've got a permit that proves
And
that it
show
was
it.
legally built, or I'm going to change it to be conforming.
So then my second part of the question is, so we had talked about how are we planning to make the determination? I mean, again, I volunteered if we have to get minions out to go survey every sign.
Well,
you know.
that's city
But I
council.
mean,
That's
but no,
up
but
to
I
the
mean.
city council to
So, one of the suggestions was, what we used to do was, when they came in for their annual business license, you give them the information about the sign stuff, and people were able to say, yes, I had a permit, it's permit number blah, 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 and we
Right.
were all
But what
good.
you're talking about is the procedure of enforcement, which that's out of our purview. The city council's going to have to step up and say, here's how we're going to enforce the sign code.
Well, I'm just asking staff, what do they anticipate is the mechanism for figuring that out? So, again, let's say we make a motion tonight that we recommend adoption of this. To me, we've only got one leg of the three-legged stool. And I've already been through this twice. That's why I'm so adamant about it, because we thought we had a mechanism in place, and then we didn't. It's in the code, but, you know, you can't lead a, get blood out of a turnip, so to speak.
And it boils down to that we can't force the city commission to put the mechanism into place to enforce the code.
Well, then what's the point?
That was my point that I made last meeting and the one before.
I mean, I think a lot of really good work has been done on this, and I think we beat this horse to death, but I
Well, we're
find
kinda
it
going in circles.
very difficult
We
to
just-
support this without some recommendation
That's what I'm saying.
from
We-
us that says, what is the point of doing all this if you're not going to make it come into conformance?
Yeah,
I just, I will not support this.
Well, we're going in circles. That's what we just said. We need to attach to an approval of this recommendation to the city commission that they also implement some sort of enforcement procedure. And I think that's as far as we can go. That's all we've got.
Well, I think we can go further by making suggestions about what that might be, subject to staff review of that.
Sounds like another meeting.
I'm not going to, I'm sorry.
No, don't
The
be
planning
sorry.
commission provides policy direction.
Mm-hmm.
City commission, through the city manager, directs staff to implement.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
So We're addressing this in two steps. One is we're trying to get the code into place, and then we're going to have a policy discussion about funding, staffing, in order to implement it.
Yep.
And all we
I
can
can't
do-
guarantee you that the city commission is going to agree with everything that's in here, but this is the process that we go through.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we
So I think-
create the work plan as staff to implement.
Right. So we make a motion to that effect with the revisions in this code.
They're aware of it. We've
Yeah.
had this discussion
Yeah.
multiple times over multiple years.
Right, but
So,
I still think, as part of the formal statement, we do need to say that there needs to be a, clear enforcement policy in place to make this occur, or
It's
we're,
not a policy, we need to fund it.
that's, yeah. But the thing is, and I know this is a city commission thing, but that's the thing is it funding the planning department to deal with the signs, or is it funding code enforcement
Or-
to go out and give notices to
Both
people?
of, or, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean.
It's
It's a
Right.
partnership.
And
It's a
that's
partnership,
what the city commission's got to do is, where are they going to put the money?
So I would suggest we craft a,
A memorandum?
well, just a.
Cover letter.
The motion. to-
Well, a motion that has a recommendation to approve the sign code as proposed, and for the city commission to develop a procedure for enforcement and for funding the enforcement procedure, the process.
That sounds perfect.
Second.
But isn't that what Tony said, that they're...
Was that a motion?
That's down.
I'm just suggesting
Just,
something.
okay,
Yeah.
so
Missed the-
we have a motion and a second. I'm not trying to be difficult. Maybe I have said the obvious, but having been through this before, both as a citizen and as a staff person, it doesn't work. So,
Well,
We hear you.
yeah,
but
okay,
I've
the
all
said
right.
at
is-
least
So-
3 different occasions that
Well,
we're
I've agreed.
wasting our time if this doesn't have
Yeah.
enforcement
Right.
in exactly the same way as having speed limits
Yeah.
without enforcement is
And
kind
the
of
last time
irrelevant.
there
That's
was-
another subject,
I
sore
know,
subject
yeah,
with
I'm
And the
just-
this.
last time there was there was enforcement codified in it, and it didn't work.
Right.
So why would we bother to do that
So-
if the next step doesn't?
I'm suggesting our motion is to approve that the sign code also have, by the city council, an implementation procedure, and that a funding be provided to execute that implementation procedure. So, does somebody want to make a motion to that effect?
And also the public art mural and the no permits for signs and
Right. As amended.
Mhm.
So, I think it just needs to be simpler than that, and just say that this city commission needs to
Suck it
fund
up
and
do-
implement enforcement, or stop wasting everybody's time.
Exactly.
I'll clean that up for you a little bit.
You know, Damon, he is to the point. You know, remember the rats patootie? We had that already.
That's right.
Yes.
I know exactly the phrase I'd use, but wrong line. So,
Our lives.
Maybe you could just write it down and we could just read it.
no written things show up even faster.
That's
than
right.
So anyway, I move that we approve the city, or the sign code as amended for those 2 items, the permitting for, and
public art mural.
public art mural. And that we strongly encourage the city commission to fund and implement an enforcement policy in order to make this sign code viable.
Yes.
I would like to delete the word encourage. I think we strongly recommend. With prejudice.
Strongly recommend, sure.
Yes.
Strongly recommend, yeah. Second.
Right.
Call the question?
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe?
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff?
The only way I'm supporting this is with that in there. Aye.
Commissioner Guile?
My conscience tells me on behalf of the other businesses, no.
Yeah, that's fine.
Chair Kidwell?
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
So this will be in front of the City Commission for their next public hearing on February 4th, 2015. It's planning file L14-01. We'll be having at least one, if not more, work sessions with them,
Can,
bringing them up to speed.
not to add to your already luminous and burdensome workload, but I would like very much for us on the attachment that we all sign it.
Sure. We've got plenty of time. So.
Yeah. I have no
I should
problem with
clarify,
that.
I supported
I know you
99.99%
did.
of that,
I know you
of the
did.
sign code. Great job everybody did on it, just one little thing.
Well, you
fixed
can
my
come,
problem.
you can come before the city commission and you can testify,
I
because
will.
because I can tell you, I sure as heck will be coming to testify about it.
I'll wear boxing gloves.
No, you won't need boxing gloves.
Because you're both supporting the same thing.
Okay,
I'm with
so, communications.
So the proposed cell tower at the McLaughlin Elementary School was scheduled to be heard by the Planning Commission on November 10th at our next meeting. AT&T has withdrawn that application, so we're probably looking at not holding a hearing that night or a meeting. The next meeting we have scheduled is for December 8th of 2014 for an application that's just been deemed complete. The other thing is that we have 4 positions that need to be appointed again. So we're going to finish that. I think the applications either closed last Friday or last Friday. So since there's 4, we're going to wait till after the election. The mayor wants the mayor-elect to be a part of that, since the mayor-elect will be making the appointments. As you recall, last time we had folks come in and we did an interview with the planning commissioners, and the mayor was in the seat. So there'll only be 3 of you doing those interviews along with the mayor, since the other 4 need to reapply and go through that process again. Right.
Didn't reapply? Could you be part of the interview process?
Well, you did reapply, Damon. So.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, all 4 reapplied.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There were 8 total submitted.
Competition. Can't handle that.
So we will be working on getting those scheduled and trying to get that set up. We'll obviously be able to do a little bit more after the election and know those results
Well,
to
the
find
mayor
some
gave
dates
me
that work.
some Incorrect information.
I'm sorry?
I said, I think our mayor may have given me some incorrect information. He said he was going to
Wouldn't be the first time.
wait before he left. I said, okay, works for me.
So December 8th is our next scheduled meeting?
That we have a land use hearing on, yes. We may try to, with Thanksgiving in there, we just got to find a date to do these interviews for these planning commissions.
Okay, so sometime in the next month, we'll have the
They'll do it on the 10th.
interviews.
month and a half, yeah. Maybe we catch either the first week of December. We'll just try and find some dates that work for everybody.
Did I understand you say there's 4 positions up and 8 people have applied?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's all that I have.
I went to the Metro meeting that they had here talking about the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. It was interesting,
For their council meeting?
yes.
Yeah.
And I was partially overjoyed and then equally disappointed when the gal from the Natural Resources Group talked about the property that they had acquired that's adjacent to Fox Lane. So that's going to be a good thing to provide a staging area for access, which will be good, because right now there's really nowhere to go.
Pretty limited access right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.